What's good, y'all? My name is Darius, and I'm here to bring you a series that I've been thinking about doing for quite a while. The series itself is called The 101. Now, the reason I wanted to do a 101 is because I like to explain some of the more complex game mechanics in certain games that usually newer users are turned away from. And for the first 101, I want to teach a few of the game mechanics in a game that I've been playing for about 6 years right now. And that game is Warframe. Now, when you first begin playing Warframe, the game itself seems like a basic run of the mill third person shooter. But the game itself lends itself so many deeper mechanics that it goes beyond just the weapons you equip and what type of Warframe you have. As many of the things I'm going to teach you within the game, you'll learn various things from combat to movement abilities to pretty much your orbiter right here, which is where I'm at. Now, this I'm going to have a series of videos that teaches some of the more complex things. But for now, I'm going to show you some of the basics in the first few videos I'm going to do in this series. So, a little bit of background. I've been playing Warframe since 2014. It was a game that I was sort of skeptical about. It was more or less, to me, a placeholder until Destiny came out, which is another looter shooter by Bungie. As time went on, and as I began playing both Destiny and Warframe, I found myself liking Warframe much more than I did Destiny. Which Warframe is a free-to-play game, which means if you don't truly like the game, all it costs is memory. That's pretty much it. It's one of those freemium style games where you can buy premium currency in the game, but it's not required to beat the game, since the game itself has its own player-driven community, which is actually pretty awesome. And I do like the community as well, as they're really helpful. They can help they can help teach new players about certain game mechanics. They'll tell you exactly where to farm for certain resources. If you're looking for groups, you can look for different groups doing different activities. The game itself is extremely expansive. But for today, or this video, I'm going to teach you a few things about your dropship or your orbiter. Now, to kick off the 101, I'm going to give you pretty much a crib style explanation of everything that's on this ship, including down there as well. But I'll explain it after I finish explaining the nose of the ship, which is pretty much the main hub of the game itself. Anyway, your dropship or your orbiter is basically your own personal hub. Whenever you first drop into the game, you come into this huge area right here. This area is where you start. Now, I'm going to explain some of the consoles starting counterclockwise, starting from the right all the way to the left. Now, let's get started. This console right here is the marketplace. The marketplace is where you go to where you can get various different things from blueprints for warframes, weapons. You can get different equipment such as boosters, mods, etc. You can also get blueprints for different accessories for your sentinels or your pets themselves. You can also get bundles as well, such as for cosmetics, weapons, weapon skins, various miscellaneous things as well. You can also get items from Tennogen. Now, Tennogen is pretty much the community-driven cosmetic portion of the game, where different community members have different designs that they sort of compete with each other in contests, and if you win the contest, your skin or your design will make it into the game in its entirety. You can have things from different types of helmets, warframe skins, again weapon skins, armor. You can even get Sandanas as well, which is sort of the little decoration on your weapons. This is also where you access Prime Access as well and Prime Vault. Prime Access is basically you get access to the different Prime variants of the Warframes, which I will explain in another video for the Warframes and their abilities. The Prime Vault is exclusive to Prime members. Now there are two different members. There's the standard members, which I am, and then there are Prime members. Prime members have access to pretty much all the Prime variants of the Warframes they have up to this point. And the newest Prime that's out currently is Inaros, which you can see right here. However, they are bringing out a newer Warframe, which I believe is Neza Prime, which is going to be the newer frame that's coming out. And down all the way down here is the Platinum. Platinum is the premium currency in the game, next to credits, which is the common currency in this game. The Platinum you get can be used to buy various different things. You could buy full Warframes, full created weapons with special items attached to them that will give you an extra slot as well. Or you can buy slots for your foundry or your inventory. More on that later. Anyway, that's the marketplace. This area right here is the Conclave. You could consider Conclave the PvP portion of the game in its entirety. And just like the game itself, just like PvP in general, you have different different options available. You got Annihilation, which is basically the free-for-all or deathmatch of the game. Team Annihilation, which is team deathmatch. Cephalon Capture, which is capture the flag. And then you have Lunaro, which is the sport of Warframe. I haven't really played any of these, but if you played any PvP style game, such as Destiny, that has the PvE, and then you have the PvP mode, this is basically what it is right here. Up top, just above that, you'll see which is referred to as standing, which I will explain in the syndicates portion of the video. Well, in a syndicate video in the near future. This console right here is the news ticker. The news ticker lets you know various things, such as if there's any hot fixes, any new updates, any dev streams that are happening. You can also see various different options as well, such as when dev streams start, they'll do, again, all the way to the top, which is Twitch drops. Now, the idea behind that is that if you participate in dev streams, you can get various different items by watching their live stream on Twitch, which is pretty cool. And you can get various different items such as, Sandanas, free boosters and whatnot. The items vary depending on what they have. Plus, on top of that, you can see what new things they have and what new things they'll release in the near future. Navigation. Navigation is pretty much the lifeblood of this in its entirety. The thing behind navigation is that this is where you select all your missions, any miscellaneous things you're doing, such as void relics, void fissures, invasions, sorties, your alerts. This is where everything happens. I'll explain more on this in another video. This is your syndicates. Syndicates in its entirety is pretty much like the factions of MMO, or guilds, so to speak. You have a total of 6 different factions, which I will also explain in the near future, but the 6 factions are Red Veil, the Perrin Sequence, New Loka, Steel Meridian, Cephalon Suda, and the Arbiters of Hexus. I'll explain in more detail about how these factions fit into the lore of Warframe in its entirety, and it also has its own daily standing cap as well. Now, to the far right is your codex. Now, the codex is your central console that has a ton of different items available for you. Obviously, one of the items you have available to you is Quest, Universe, Laverian, Training, and Missions. This console explains in detail what each of these mean, which each and every one of these items can give various information about the different items in the outside world, weapons, relics, objects, companions, warframes, etc. and so forth. You can also look up various mods as well, such as if there's a certain mod you're looking for, or if you don't have a certain mod, you can look for it here. Laverian is more or less a overview of the Warframe in its entirety. I haven't spent too much time here, so I have very little knowledge of what each of these have in mind. Training, which I will go through with you in the future videos, tells you about various things in the game that can help you, that helps push you in the right direction. You'll get things from the basics, advanced movement, melee, mods, crafting, etc. and so forth. This is where you want to go to if you want to brush up on, or if you may have forgotten certain advanced concepts that you've been out of practice on. This is the area to go to refresh yourself with various things. The missions tab tells you about the various missions throughout the game itself. Although some missions do sound the same on the surface, they're actually vastly different depending on which type of missions you select. For example, exterminate missions require you to defeat a certain amount of enemies, and then you can get to extraction. Or defense, which means you have to defend an object for a certain amount of waves before you can leave. But as you can see, there are several different missions, and as time goes on, I'm going to explain each and every one of these to you in more detail. But other than that, the codex is where you want to go to often if you have this specific item, which is called a codex scanner, which lets you scan different enemies, which is an item that you can buy from the marketplace itself. And I want to talk a bit more on the codex. If you have the codex scanners and you scan certain enemies, you can pick up more and more and more information about the enemy in its entirety. As a matter of fact, let me go to the codex and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go to Universe. I'm going to go to Factions. These are the enemies of the universe. Depending on what type of faction you select or what type of enemy you face, you'll come across different enemies. And the enemies themselves, when you scan them, you'll find out a little bit more about certain enemies. For example, the crewman is part of the Corpus faction. Naturally, you can find out various things about the Corpus themselves, or this enemy in general. Since this is a common enemy, you see them a whole lot. But as you begin scanning enemies, you'll learn various things outside of what the name they are, what faction they're from, their stats, how much shield they have, how much health they have. You'll even figure out which region they're more common on. And if you fully scan them, you'll get much more information on them, such as the type of mods they drop or what type of resource they have as well. So the bottom line is, when you get codex scanners, get into the habit of scanning these guys as often as you can, as knowledge literally is power in this game. Alright, so that's the codex. So in summary, this is where you're going to be visiting often, a lot, for when you want to do various missions, if you need information on specific enemies, if you want to go get a certain blueprint for your Warframe or your weapon, or if you want to check on your standing for your syndicate or conclave, or if there's more news you want to, or if there's more news that you would like to check up on for Digital Extremes, you can look over at the news ticker. Anyway, since that's done, we're going to walk down to the bottom of this, the bottom of the dropship. Oh, didn't mean to look up there, but still. Anyway, that up there is my railjack. Naturally, my railjack is sort of it's pretty much a weapon within itself. But if you haven't gotten a railjack yet, the only way to get one is by completing missions for your dojo, which that's far off, which I will explain in a much near future. Anyway, much like how up on the nose of the ship, down here you have various different things to you have various different places at your disposal as well. And just like up there, I'm going to start counterclockwise from the right and work my way all the way to the left. Now, this is the foundry. This is pretty much the central portion of where you're going to be completing different blueprints. Now, in the foundry, you have various items at your disposal. Now, it's made up of two different types of items. You got the blueprint and you have the resources. The resources is what you collect on various planets or what you can buy from the marketplace. Now, you get different resources from different areas around the universe. Whenever you complete missions and whenever you are doing said mission, you'll notice that you'll be picking up a bunch of different resources. These are the resources in the game. You get them by doing various different tasks, such as killing enemies, buying it from the marketplace, etc., and so on. Now, the type of resource you get is dependent solely on where you farm your resources from. And it's time, and in a future video, I'll explain how to effectively farm different resources and different things, and it pretty much in the whole universe. So to make it a bit more easier to get various items in this, get various items for your blueprints. Anyway, the foundry is made up of various different tabs. You got your Warframe tab where you have the blueprints for your Warframes and the different parts for your Warframes as well. Same thing with your primary weapons. You have the primary weapon itself and you have the resources needed to make said weapon. You have your secondary weapons, same thing. Melee, Arcwing, Sentinel, Landing Craft, Appearance, Gear, Keys, Modular, which is pretty advanced stuff. Fishing, which isn't as advanced, but still is up there. Mining, and Miscellaneous. Now, each of these different items and each of these different tabs are different. Now, the Miscellaneous tab is pretty much a tab for pretty much just a few of the items that you would get throughout the game itself. But there are certain other items that you can get as well. Since some of these items may pertain to story items or items that you can get over time. But in its entirety, each tab is sorted, and when you get something new, it automatically goes into the respective tab itself. So if you get a blueprint for a weapon, all your weapons appear either under primary, secondary, or melee, depending on the type of weapon that you have. Now, weapons that can't be made or you don't have the parts for will be grayed out. However, any weapon that you do have the parts for and can make will be highlighted to let you know. So, starting from the top, this weapon is called the Boar. You got the name of the weapon. You got a sort of a shorthand description of the weapon itself. You also got the resources needed to make it. Any weapon, well, any blueprint that has a check mark next to it, meaning you have the resource for it. You have the amount of resources for it. And if you see it grayed out like this, and if you see it grayed out like this, that means you don't have an item for it. So So yeah. Anyway, the number on the right hand side is the amount of resources needed to build the weapon. The number on the left side is the amount of resources you have on hand. So if you have the ones on hand, you can highlight it, and it'll ask you if you want to build. In this particular case, I already have the board, so I don't really need to build it. But in order to build it, you need to have actually the credits that I mentioned before in the or if I did mention it, the credits before is needed to make said weapon. So for me to build this weapon, well, as soon as loaders get out the way. But in order to build the weapon, I need 15,000 credits in order to build it. This is how much it costs to build it. This is how long it takes. 12 hours is actually real time, which means if you build a weapon now, it won't be done for half a day. This tells you exactly how many blueprints you have of it left. And this tells you whether or not you can build it. If you don't have enough components, this will tell you not enough components. But in its entirety, each item in here can take anywhere from a few seconds to about a few days, depending on how advanced and how much more of it you do. The Warframe in its entirety takes a total of 3 days, 72 hours. But it's the most expensive thing that you will have to make. Since Warframes is made up of 3 different parts, which is the neuroptics, the systems, and the chassis, you need those 3, and you need one more, which is called an organ cell. Which I'm not going to go into too much detail with it, as this is, I wouldn't say this is pretty advanced, but if you do come across different parts for different Warframes, save them. You want to make sure you do so. Even if you don't have the frame itself, you can still make the part itself, and when you do get the frame, you can build it. But in summary, the foundry is where you go to create all different types of items, from Warframe parts to weapons to items that you can carry with you into the field itself. But yeah, this is where you go to whenever you want to build something new, or you have the resources, or you want to check the resources that you have. Normally this area right here houses the Sentinel, but I kind of put the Sentinel away because I got my where's my pet? Oh, there she is. Which I will also explain this as well. But since I have my pet out with me, the Sentinel itself won't appear here. But if my pet is in there, then my Sentinel would show up here if I have it selected. But again, I'll get to that. This is Void Relics. One of the missions in the game is called Void Fissures. Back at navigation, I mentioned that you can select from various different missions, such as invasions, sorties, and void fissures. These are the relics used to participate in void fissure missions. But if you don't have void relics, you can still participate in the void fissure. You won't be able to select any of the items that are inside. And to let you know, this is the only way to get different void item, to get different prime items in the game. This is also one of the ways to get some of the prime warframes in the game as well. And just like the resources in the foundry, this is the only way to get different types of items or parts for the different weapons and the warframes that you have. Now, this is pretty advanced stuff, as the Void Relics took the place of a item that was first viewed as the Void Keys. But just like the relics themselves, they come in 4 different tiers. The tiers themselves are Lith, Meso, Neo, and Axii. These are special relics that are best not gotten into because there are various things. This is pretty much in-game content in its entirety, and I'm not going to get into too much detail, but this will give you something to work towards when you want to get different relics in its entirety. But there are various ways you can get different relics, such as doing certain missions to paying a certain amount of standing to getting them on the syndicates, etc. and so forth. But yeah, this is where your void relics are. I'm not gonna go down there because all that's pretty much end game content, and that's pretty much spoiler territory, and I'd rather not spoil it too soon. Anyway, this is your arsenal. Now, this is where the meat and potatoes of Warframe happens. This is where you select your entire loadout for your Warframe in its entirety. You also have various other things as well. Various other things as well. My apologies. You'll have You have pretty much a lot of information here. Over here you have, which is pretty much your loadout, so to speak. You have your Tenno loadout. You have your companion loadout. You have your gear wheel. And you have something called the Tenno loadout for the Archwing. Now the Archwing is completely different, and I'm not going to get into too much detail with it, as it's really, well, not extreme in-game content, but it's a bit later on in the game itself. But anyway, back to the Tenno loadout for the Warframe. Anyway, you got various options to select from in your Tenno loadout. You got your Warframe loadout, well, your Warframe option, your primary weapon, secondary weapon, and melee weapon. These two down here, I'm not going to go into detail with them, as again, that's in-game content, and don't want to spoil it. But anyway, when you select the Warframe, you'll see various different information down here as well. You also have the Warframe abilities. If you ever want to know what the Warframe ability is, just mouse over it and it will give you a sort of demo of what the Warframe ability does. Each Warframe has 4 different abilities, and they unlock at ranks 1, 5. They unlock at ranks, I believe, I think this unlocks at rank 1. I believe this unlocks at rank 3 or 5. This unlocks at rank 7, and your Warframe's final ability or ultimate unlocks at rank 10. Now, next to the Warframe, you'll see a few different options. You have Equip, Upgrade, Appearance, and Abilities. Equip is when you can select from various Warframes that you have. If you have more than one Warframe, you can select whichever Warframe you want. These are pretty much my Warframes. Some of them I haven't played as yet. Some of them I didn't touch yet, which I intend to get into in the near future. And there are some that I just built, such as Ivara Prime. Me personally, I prefer playing as Inaros, as he's one of my favorite frames in the entire game, as he pretty much has the best health in the, he has the highest health in the game, bar none. But that doesn't stop me from playing various other Warframes, as I'm still learning some of the core mechanics of how some of the other Warframes are, which is why I say I'm learning more stuff in the game in its entirety. Upgrade is when you can select different mods for your Warframe. Right now, these are my mods for my Warframe at the moment. Although there's more that I intend to do with the frame itself, this is pretty much what I have on my Warframe right now. Now, although I don't have a full build right now, I do have various things that I would like to explain, but I'll go in a bit more detail. Each Warframe has different stats to them, and each of those stats depict what the Warframe specializes in its entirety. You can have mods revolve around different Warframe abilities, or you can have it revolve around a type of Warframe. But that's pretty much Upgrade in a nutshell. When you have mods that you collect in the world, you can apply those mods to your Warframe, and those mods upgrade your Warframe accordingly depending on which path you normally take. Appearance. This is how your Warframe is. You can pretty much do anything with your Warframe. You can customize its stance. You can customize their stance. You can customize their helmet, skin, their idle animation, any attachment, Sindana, Regalia. You can even set the colors that the Warframe has in its entirety. Or you can randomize the colors whichever you want. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail as this is pretty much just... It's just a whole lot that goes on with the Warframe itself. And I don't want to really just waste your time just going through the Warframe customization options as it goes deep. And then you have the Warframe's abilities, as I explained before. This is the abilities page. The abilities page tells you various things. You got every Warframe in this game has a passive, and each passive is unique to that Warframe in its entirety. Actually, if you also mouse over the different abilities, you'll get the same results as you did when I mouse over the abilities on the abilities portion on the right hand side. This is pretty much the same. The only difference is that you got passive and you got the tips for the Warframe itself. Passive is pretty much a Warframe's ability that it has that's innate on it. For example, Inaros' passive is, while bleeding out, Inaros becomes entombed in a protective sarcophagus. He can revive himself by draining the life force from nearby enemies and allies. What this means is that Inaros can self-revive when he kills enemies and takes their life along with them. So in other words, if you're by yourself and you're playing as Inaros, you can self-revive without having your friends come over to save your life. The tips section gives you, a few more tips on the Warframe itself, such as, for example, allies can help Inaros resurrect from a sarcophagus faster by killing enemies in his vicinity. So that means Inaros can self-revive much faster if they kill enemies around him. So those are the kind of tips that you would have. And as I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'm giving you a sort of look into this. Like, cast Desiccation while enemies are facing Inaros to blind them, then use a melee finisher to regain health. So pretty much Inaros could be considered an attack style Warframe or an attack style Warframe or a support style Warframe, as anybody who kills enemies while under desiccation regains health. And since Inaros has a large health pool, he can recover his health in as little as five assassination kills, which heals him immediately. Which means if Inaros is geared right, he never dies. And that's why I like playing as Inaros, since he has pretty decent survivability. You also have options for the primary, secondary, and melee weapon as well. This is pretty much the same thing, except you can equip different primary weapons, and you can upgrade your primary weapons as well. The same thing with your secondary weapon as well, and your melee. Anyway, that's the arsenal. So you're going to be spending a lot of time here and a lot of resources upgrading different mods. Well, that's going to be in the other section. But you can spend your time here in the arsenal loading out on different weapons, different color schemes, and basically you can just go crazy in here. Because you can change every little bit of detail about your frame. Like, this is just the stock color for Inaros. This is how he looked when I got him. I never changed his color. I mean, your Inaros may be completely different. He could be blood red, and every time he uses his abilities, it looks like he's throwing blood in somebody's face and he's stabbing them, and you pretty much get the picture. Anyway, this right here is the incubator. The incubator is where you can create different types of pets. Now the types of pets you can have is Kubros, Kavat, or Helminths. Now the type of pets you have ranges depending on what type of pets that you have in your inventory. Much like how you equip different items in your inventory, in your arsenal, you can equip pets or sentinels the exact same way. Each pet has their own behavior, and they have their own sort of hook to them. Like this type of Kavat that I have right here, the Adarza Kavat. This will give you a short description of what the type of Kavat it is, and how it reacts. Like this right here is the short line description of it. Piercing eyes reflect deadly instincts. Although it doesn't give much information, it pretty much tells you exactly what type of Kavat it does. The Kavat I have is capable of giving... actually, as a matter of fact, it's right here in the arsenal, and I'm going to show you. Alright. This is pretty much my Kavat in its entirety. Since it has you know, eyes of, you know, instinct and whatnot, one of its precepts is Cat's Eye. The Adarza Kavat grants 15% increased critical chance for 4 seconds to allies within 15 meters every 50 seconds. So what that means is that as long as I have my Kavat down, well, my Kavat with me at all times, it'll put up this sort of field that will increase by, that will grant me a 15% increase to my critical chance on top of my critical chance that I already have. But again, I'm going to go into much more detail about the Kavat in its entirety when I get the chance and when I upgrade her a bit more. But that gives you an idea of what she's capable of. And yes, your pets can have genders between male and female. But in essence, that's exactly what the incubator is for. Now, you can use platinum to rush incubation to adult stage, but depending on whether or not you want to do so, you can rush it, or you can just let the pet itself grow naturally. Now, the final portion is the mods. The mods you've seen on my frame are pretty much these right here. Just like with the upgrades and the different abilities, each mod corresponds to different areas. Well, it corresponds to different tabs on what the mod is used for. For example, you have mods for Warframes, you have aura mods that affect your entire team, you have augments, which affects certain Warframes in a certain way, and you have mods for your primary, secondary, and melee weapon. I'm not going to go into too much detail with all these, as it's pretty much going to take an entire video to cover all the... I say this is more or less the intermediate portion of the game, where I go into a bit more detail about explaining different mods and what they affect in their entirety. So up here you have various options. You have Fusion, which you can use to upgrade different mods. Transmute, which means you can select any 4 mods, combine them, and create a brand new mod. You can sell the mods for credits, or you can dissolve the mods into Endo, which can help upgrade the mods in their entirety. This last tab, Ayatan's Treasures. The Ayatan Treasures that you see here can be used to trade in for Endo. Now, depending on the type of Endo that you have, you can, depending on the type of sculpture that you have, you can have, if you trade it in, you'll get a certain amount of Endo. Like this right here, this little gold and light blue orb right here, this is Endo. This stuff is used to upgrade mods. Or you can use the Ayatam sculpture itself as an ornament, that like how I have. Now, all these right here, you can sell for Endo itself. However, and I'm going to do a little bit of that on this, is if you slot these into different Ayatan sculptures, you can increase the value of the Ayatan itself. Now, the Ayatan sculptures and everything you can use to sell to this dealer referred to as Maru. You can also do relic hunts for her, well, sculpture hunts for her on a weekly basis, where you can get a new Ayatan sculpture, which you're guaranteed to get. But all in all, this section right here is where you go to if you want to check on different mods, upgrade different mods, or if you want to sell them off or transmute them. Anyway, that's pretty much it for me explaining the different sections of the ship. Went on a bit longer than I should have. I mean, it took about 20 takes to do this. But anyway, this is my first time doing this, so if there's any anything you guys wanna ask, or if there's something that you didn't understand, or if there's something I didn't cover in the video, be sure to leave them down in the comments below. Also, I will leave a link down in the description as well for where you can look for the different where you can look up various information on wiki, which I frequent a lot, and I constantly go to it to get different updates and to get just to refresh myself on some of the knowledge that I may have lacked by not knowing what does what or what doesn't. Anyway, in the next video, I'm going to explain some of the more complex things, such as actually, I'm going to go into Warframes in their entirety, as they actually deserve their own video. So anyway, until then, I'll catch you guys later.